The Bengal Rebellion, the Untold Chronicle of Empire and Blood. Chapter 1. The Smoke over Calcutta. The air of Calcutta in 1857 did not carry the fragrance of empire. It carried gunpowder. From the windows of Fort William, the British officers saw the city shimmering in heat, a golden haze over the Hooghly River. Yet beneath that shimmer, Bengal was trembling. The whispers of rebellion had arrived like monsoon thunderclouds, rolling from the north, from Meerut and Delhi, where Indian sepoys had turned their guns against their masters. The mutiny, as London would later call it, was, in truth, a storm of vengeance long in the making. But to a young Bengali scholar named Aref Rahman, the rebellion began not with a gunshot, but with a silence, the silence of his father's death. Aref was 21, a teacher at the Calcutta madrasa, and a man born between two worlds. His Arabic verses could move a crowd to tears, but he could also recite Shakespeare's sonnets with perfect diction. His late father, Maulana Karim Rahman, had believed that the English were God's punishment and his opportunity combined. Learn from them, Aref, he would say, but never kneel. That balance was fragile, and by the summer of 1857, it was breaking. On a gray June morning, Aref stood outside the madrasa gate, clutching a copy of the Bengal Rebellion, one of Calcutta's English newspapers. The headlines screamed treason, native troops mutiny in Meerut, Delhi captured by rebels. British soldiers were already marching along the Chowringhee Road, their red coats blazing in the heat. The sound of drums echoed off the walls, steady and cold. To Aref, the rhythm was both magnificent and terrifying, like the march of fate itself. Aref's friend, Ratan Chandra Bose, a Hindu clerk at the governor's office, appeared beside him. His starched dhoti was immaculate, but his voice trembled. "Do you hear what they're saying? The British will crush Delhi in a week." "And after Delhi?" Aref asked quietly. Ratan glanced around before whispering, "Then they'll crush Calcutta before Calcutta crushes them." That night, the first fires appeared in the north. Rumors spread that sepoys from Barrackpore were deserting, that letters written in code, wrapped in cloth and soaked in oil, were being sent from village to village, calling men to rise. The British called it madness. To Aref, it sounded like prophecy. He walked through the narrow alleys of Nakhoda Lane, past the spice stalls and opium dens, where the smell of roasted cumin mingled with the rot of the river. He stopped at a small tea shop run by an old man named Hafizullah, who once was a courier for the Nawabs before the company took Bengal. "The sepoys will not stop at Delhi," Hafizullah said, stirring his tea slowly. "They will come here, and when they do, the British will learn what Bengal remembers." "What does Bengal remember?" Aref asked. The old man smiled sadly. "Plassey, 1757. 100 years ago, the Battle of Plassey had changed everything when the British East India Company bought betrayal with silver and won an empire with lies. Now, in 1857, Bengal still bled from that wound. By midnight, the smoke of burning jute warehouses rose over the river. Aref climbed the roof of his small home near College Street and watched. In the flickering red light, he saw the silhouettes of soldiers, not British, but Indian sepoys in company uniforms, running through the alleys with torches. Somewhere in the distance, a cannon boomed. His mother's voice rose from below. "Aref, get inside! The soldiers are looting!" But Aref did not move. He watched the flames and thought of his father's words, "Learn from them, but never kneel." For the first time in his life, Aref wondered if kneeling had already begun the moment Bengal accepted the company's schools, its railways, its silver. At dawn, Calcutta's streets were filled with ashes. The rebellion had not yet reached Bengal, but fear had. The British had already begun rounding up suspicious natives. Aref's madrasa was closed until further notice. When he reached home, a British constable was waiting at his door. "Mr. Aref Rahman?" the officer asked in crisp English. "Yes. You've been summoned to Fort William. The Governor-General wishes to question all educators regarding anti-government sentiments." Aref's blood ran cold. "I am a teacher, not a soldier." The constable smiled thinly. "In times like these, sir, the two are often the same." Inside Fort William, Aref saw the machinery of empire up close. Rows of desks piled with files, telegraph machines ticking like nervous hearts, and officers sweating under their collars as they dictated reports to London. In one corner, a young British lieutenant was translating a letter written in Persian. "To my brothers in Bengal, do not fear the white man's thunder. The hour of the sword is upon us." When Aref's turn came, the officer behind the desk, a stern man named Captain William Forster, looked him over with polite disdain. "You're a scholar, Mr. Rahman." "Yes." "And what do you teach?" "History." "History?" Forster's lips curled. "Then perhaps you can tell me, why do your people never learn from it?" Aref met his eyes calmly. "Perhaps because the British keep rewriting it." The silence that followed was dangerous. Forster's fingers drummed on the table. Then he leaned forward. "Careful, Mr. Rahman. There are winds moving through this city that could burn you alive." Aref bowed slightly. "Then I must learn to walk in fire." That night, Aref was released, but followed. He could feel the eyes of company spies everywhere. The rebellion was spreading faster than the British could contain it. Across Bengal, secret meetings were taking place among peasants, poets, and priests. And somewhere in those shadows, a plan was forming. A plan that would one day lead not just to rebellion, but to the birth of a nation. As Aref crossed the Howrah Bridge at dawn, he looked out over the river. Smoke still lingered over Calcutta, curling like a ghost above the water. The sun rose blood-red over the city that would soon become the heart of a storm. He whispered to himself, almost as prayer, "Bengal will remember."
Chapter 2. The Letters of Fire. Calcutta, August, 1857. The monsoon rain fell like judgment. It washed over the city's cobblestones, over the corpses of rats floating in the drains, and over the trembling hearts of men who no longer knew whether the world they lived in was collapsing or being reborn. Aref Rahman stood under the dripping awning of an old bookshop on College Street, his shawl soaked, clutching a package wrapped in oilcloth. Inside were papers, poems, essays, and translations, but one document was not what it appeared. It was written in Bengali script, but beneath the verses of a patriotic song lay a code that could cost him his life. The bookshop belonged to Haripada Mukherjee, a frail man with round spectacles and an unfailing cough. Outwardly, he sold British textbooks and cheap English novels to clerks and students, but behind the shelves, beyond a false wall of the Times of India archives, was a small, candle-lit room where Bengal plotted its resurrection. Aref knocked 3 times, then once again after a pause. The door opened, revealing Haripada's sharp, anxious face. You shouldn't have come in daylight, he hissed. The constables are watching the madrasa, not the bookshops, Arif said quietly. That's what you think. Inside, 4 men were already gathered around a wooden table. Among them sat Rakenchandra Bose, Arif's friend from the governor's office, his clothes damp from rain. Beside him, a tall, bearded man with intense eyes was tracing letters on a map of Bengal. This, Ratan whispered, is Subodh Babu. He was in Barrackpore during the Sepoy revolt. Subodh looked up. His voice was low, like distant thunder. I saw the British hangmen from the banyan trees, whole rows of them. They called it justice. No one spoke. Outside, thunder cracked over the city. Subodh continued. Our brothers in Delhi have fallen. The emperor is captured. The British think the rebellion is over. He leaned closer. It has only changed shape. We will not fight with muskets. We will fight with words. Arif frowned. Words cannot stop rifles. Subodh smiled grimly. They can, if they burn. He reached for the oilcloth in Arif's hand and unwrapped it. Inside were pages written in Arif's own handwriting, an essay titled The Spirit of the Ganges. To anyone else, it was a philosophical reflection on faith and nature, but Subodh turned to the second page, held it over the candlelight, and the hidden words appeared in faint red ink.
The tiger sleeps beneath the banyan. When the moon rises, wake him. Aref felt his stomach tighten. The invisible ink was made from tamarind juice and arsenic, a technique borrowed from Persian spies centuries ago. Where did you learn this? Subodh asked. My father taught me, Aref said quietly. He said our people once used words as weapons, before the company took even that from us. Subodh nodded. Then your father was a wise man. He handed the pages to Ratan. You'll carry these to Jasore. There's a school teacher there who runs our correspondence line. His letters go through the post unchecked. He's a British favorite. Ratan's eyes widened. You want me to travel during curfew? You'll leave tonight, Subodh said. If they catch you, you are a courier for education reports. If they don't, he smiled faintly, then you are a courier for freedom. The meeting lasted deep into the night. They spoke in whispers, drawing routes on maps. Calcutta to Jessore, Jessore to Dhaka, Dhaka to Rangpur. Each node was a school, a mosque or a temple. Each teacher, a poet or scholar. Each poem, a message. By dawn, the rain had stopped. The sky was pale, washed clean. Aref walked home through the quiet streets, his mind burning with images. Hanged sepoys, British gunboats on the Hooghly, the faces of starving farmers. He wondered whether these fragile letters and secret codes, could truly change anything.
Chapter 3. The Chains Beneath the River.
He motioned to the guards. They brought a bucket of river water, ropes, and a wooden stick. "Perhaps the river will help you remember," Forster said softly. Hours passed, or maybe minutes. The beating came in waves. Aref's mind drifted between darkness and sound. The rush of the river below, the crack of wood against flesh, Forster's calm voice asking again and again, "Who else writes with you?" But through the haze of pain, Aref remembered the Swami's words, "Choose your words wisely." At last, when his breath came in ragged gasps, Aref whispered, "There are others." Forster's eyes gleamed. "Names?" "Too many," Aref said weakly. "Every child who learns to read, every man who still remembers his name, every woman who whispers prayers in her mother tongue, they all write with me." Forster's smile faded. He struck Aref once across the face, then turned away in disgust. "Put him back. He'll rot before he talks." That night, back in the cell, Aref could barely move. His body was a map of bruises. The Swami sat beside him, humming the same haunting tune. "You did well," he said softly. "Pain is only proof that we are still alive." Aref closed his eyes. "How long can one live like this?" "As long as the river flows," the Swami murmured, "and when it stops, others will carry the current." He reached beneath his robe and pulled out a thin strip of cloth, stained, torn, but carefully folded. Inside was a small metal key. "This opens the eastern gate," he whispered. "There's a drainage tunnel that leads to the river. It's old, built by the Nawabs long before the company came. Tomorrow night, when the guards change shift, the gate will open for 1 hour. You must go." Aref stared at him in disbelief. "You're not coming?" The Swami shook his head. "My work is here. There are others still chained who need faith more than freedom." He smiled faintly. "Besides, someone must tell them you escaped." Aref's throat tightened. "Why help me?" The Swami looked toward the dripping ceiling. "Because words like yours are rarer than swords, and they cut deeper." At midnight, the river roared like thunder beneath the fort. Aref moved silently through the corridor, the key clutched in his hand. The guards' voices echoed faintly above. He reached the iron gate, a rusted arch half buried in stone, and slid the key into the lock. It turned with a groan. Cold water rushed around his ankles. He pushed the gate open and stepped into the tunnel. The air smelled of silt and salt. Above him the fort loomed like a shadow of empire. Ahead, the moonlight glimmered faintly through the exit where the river waited. As he waded forward, he heard a voice echo from behind, a whisper carried by the stone. "When the river meets the sea, remember Bengal." Aref paused, looked back once, and whispered, "I will." Then he slipped into the current, letting the Hooghly carry him toward freedom. At dawn, fishermen found a half-drowned man tangled in their nets near Garden Reach. They thought he was dead until he coughed and opened his eyes. When they asked him his name, he whispered, "Aref." They helped him ashore, wrapped him in cloth, and led him toward a small village on the riverbank. Behind them, Fort William stood silent in the distance, its walls unchanged, but its silence broken forever.